Hey, welcome everybody to yet another live interview show with Become a Fearless Father. Glad you're here. I have another amazing guest, I must say, and I keep repeating myself, I think, but I am truly blessed with all the people that's saying yes. And this time I have Justin Bailey from the Code of Character. And man, I got some questions for you today. I hope they... No, man, I know for a fact that we're going to have a blast and learn tons from you. So I'm going to start off with the first question, and then we can start off after that with, getting to know you a bit better. But first of all, man, because I've been reading it, and I loved what you made that said the code, and then, your code. And I'm assuming it's your code, right? So I'm just wondering, can you share a little bit of what started you coming up with this code, and how has it changed you? Why is it so important for you and what you're doing?
For sure, man. Yeah. So I started this thing about 2 years ago, almost 3 years ago now, I guess, 2016. And I started just trying to, I just kind of had some inspirations of trying to talk about, at the time it was like, let's talk about manhood and let's talk about, why are some men, I don't really know how to describe it at the time because it's morphed and it's evolved, but it was, if I'm really honest, it was during the election time frame, the US elections, and there was so much infighting and so many people that were just, it seemed like we're just keep fighting over this 10 or 20% of the things that we disagree on. I just throwing out a random number, but I really believe that most of us have a big chunk of the same values and the same wants for our society and for our families and for ourselves, right? And so what I really wanted to do was create something, and I started out blogging and just kind of posting things on Facebook and stuff before it was a Facebook group and before it was, Code of Character. And one thing I thought was that that I've seen as I've been specifically, I've been leading people in the military and leadership positions and just being in the military myself. And what I found is that when people get in some trouble, whether it's legal or moral or just fail themselves, and this is including myself, I'm right there in the same category. What the deal is that it's not that we don't know the right thing to do. We just don't do it for some reason, for lots of reasons. Right. And so it's not generally a knowledge problem, but there's a disconnect between the things that we say that we believe or the things that we are supposed to be doing and the things that we're actually doing. And so I kind of wrap all that under the umbrella of character. And so then I kind of, I sat down, I actually went out to the woods one day and I sat down and I had this big, like a spider chart, where you kind of draw a bubble and then that connects to this and that connects to that. And it was a big mess of stuff. And so I walked out of there kind of with this loose kind of code of character, if you will. Right. And so I kind of think that there's three parts to this thing. And I think this might be the only thing that's kind of stayed the same about my vision for what I'm kind of doing. And it is this code. And I think it's flexible enough for, everybody should, I believe, have their own code. They should have their own kind of non-negotiables in life, the things that they believe, the things that they want to pursue, that get down into the personal level. But from a very high level, I think that that our actions should match the vision that we have for our life. So if I envision myself, being a pilot in 10 years, then I should probably be going to flight school at some point. Right. So the things that we're doing needs to support that vision for ourselves, and number one and number two could be interchanged. It's not a specific order, but I do think that vision needs to reflect our values to the world. Right. And so if I thought that, if I thought flight were detrimental to society and detrimental to the world and was going to end civilization, wanting to be a pilot would be a silly thing to do. Right. I'm being silly here, but I do think that, that when we look out into our future, or whether it's tomorrow or whether it's 10 years from now, our vision for ourselves, we should be encompassing those values. And so that's why I say our vision reflects our values. And the third part of that is, okay, I believe these things. A lot of people get these things, whether they intentionally think about their vision and their values, or whether they're just kind of navigating, day to day, kind of operating under, values that have been passed down to them, or whatever things that they've learned in school or church or family or whatever it is, right? Everybody kind of, would say, oh, I have values, and maybe give you a couple of them they believe. But that third part is where is where the reinforcement has to come in, right? And so in the code, I say my brotherhood shares my values. Almost everything that I say, I just throw the almost in there because I haven't thought about everything, could really be reflective of men or women. So, I speak to men and I talk to men in our group, but I don't differentiate that really. So I say my brotherhood shares my mission. If the people you're hanging out with are, against, air transportation, and they are in support of only, the trucking industry and only the auto industry, and they think that the air industry is going to be the ruin to society, then you probably shouldn't be hanging out with those people. Or if they think that that is an evil in the world, and burning fuel by jets is a horrible thing, and you want to be a jet pilot, those probably aren't the people to be hanging out with, right? So I don't think that it's important that the people we hang out with, the people we surround ourselves with, share our opinions as much as they share our values. And so I think that there's a huge chunk of a huge percentage of what you and I believe that I just only know you a little bit, and I've followed you online a little bit. We know some of the same people. And so I would be willing to bet that at least 80% of my values, that if I wrote all the things down that I think are good and meaningful in a life, I bet you would be right there with me, right? And there might be some 10 to 20% that you and I differ on, and we might have different opinions on, how a country should be run, or, whether air transportation or ground transportation is better, right? But those aren't the things that I think that we should be focusing on. And we do it, and we get sucked into a lot of that stuff. I do myself. And, I think that some debate and some discourse is certainly healthy. But at the end of the day, I think that most of us want a lot of the same things. And I think that we can support one another. And so what I'm trying to do with Code of Character is just build a bridge for men who maybe are or maybe are not aligned in their opinions, but we can align ourselves around some similar values.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the last thing you said, support one another.
For sure.
I've noticed that once you mentioned like brotherhood environment, right? It's what you're talking about. But I've noticed that now that I really found guys like you, guys like Brandon Handley, Kenyon Zitska and stuff like that, man, I'm feeling so much better, because these guys, Brandon is amazing at just, making me feel good, supporting me, helping me out. I'm helping him out. And that's way better than before, where, I'm with my old group of people that have no idea what I'm doing, not supporting me, even sometimes telling me like, dude, what are you doing? Like, going the other way. So yeah, absolutely can understand that brotherhood is so important. So I'm glad you're doing this. So let's dive right in, Justin. What is your background story, and not just in regards to the Code of Character, and I'm also always very interested in the family life, right?
Yeah, sure. So I've been married for 18 years. I grew up in the U.S. in Ohio, and a very typical Midwestern life, and joined the Army at the age of 20. Got married. I got married, and then a week later left for basic training. I wouldn't advise that to anyone. And so got married young, joined the Army young, and my wife and I went to Germany as our first duty station. We had some, we were, like I said, if I don't say this enough, we were very young, and I'll speak for myself, and I was extremely immature. I hadn't really figured out who I was, which I don't know if I've done that yet, but I'm a lot further than I was then, but I had put a lot of my identity into our relationship. That's kind of what I had leaned into, and that's kind of what I knew. It was kind of her and I just like, going and kind of taking on the world kind of a thing. So I think there was some natural inclination of that. But what that did was it caused an imbalance within myself, because I wasn't confident in who I was. I didn't know who I was as a man, as a person, as a human. And so I'll just kind of fast forward through that. We had some struggles and some problems like everybody does. And here we are 18 years later. We got 3 boys. We lived in Ohio for 10 years. We just moved to Germany, back to Germany, now as a civilian, 8 months ago now, as I'm looking at the calendar, 8 months ago. And we're out here. We got a 13-year-old, 10-year-old, and a 2-year-old at extremely different stages of life, which that's fun and exciting. And so we brought our boys back here. We're going to be here for a couple, 3 years just to experience, as much as we can over here of the world and show them a little bit more of the world, and have some fun in the process. So that's where I am right now, and that's what we're up to.
Nice, man. Love it. Just a question that popped in my head, man, because I'm from the Netherlands. The Dutch and the Germans, we're very alike. And when I went to the States for the first time, that was a huge culture shock. What was your experience like when you went to Germany for the first time, especially at such a, if I understood, such a young age?
Yeah. So the first time it was different, and we lived on the military installation. So we stayed around the Americans a lot. We went out and about and things, but the area where I was stationed at then was a lot of heavily influenced by the American military there. And so it was a small town that was I don't want to use the term propped up, but because they'd been there way before the American military had, for sure. But it was a little more familiar. So this time when we've come back, it's different. We're older, so we have more life experience. But what's kind of cool about it is that we are now, we live in a German town. We have German neighbors on both sides of us. We do a lot of our shopping. Our kids currently they're going to an international school, so they go to school with kids from all over the world. And so we're kind of integrating ourselves into the culture a little bit more. German society looks, and you tell me what you think about this, because it looks so similar, but when you get into some of the nuances, some of the things are so different that it looks similar enough that you're like, oh, I'm integrating here, no problem. And then you hit something, you're like, oh, this is nothing like we do in the States. I'll give you a very simple example for anybody who's out there kind of wondering what the heck I'm talking about. There's almost nothing, at least in where I live here, there's almost nothing open on Sunday. There's a few restaurants here and there, but as far as businesses, the Germans, they slow down, they go out and they do their hiking and they do their, family time and stuff on Sunday. When we first get here, that's very inconvenient. If I need gas on Sunday, if we need, some grocery, like the grocery stores aren't open. And so that's very inconvenient. But that's now that we've been here for a while, that's one of the things that I really, really appreciate. There is a sense where they slow down when there's holidays. When there's a holiday, they don't all rush out to the mall. The mall shuts down, and they are doing, I can't speak for them, but I see them out and about, spending family time and doing their hiking and stuff like that. So these are things that I really appreciate. But in the beginning, when you're trying to get used to it, you're like, oh, this is weird, and it's causing some inconvenience to me and stuff like that.
Yeah, I can absolutely understand. Yeah, that was one of the things that I noticed is like, wow, and in the States, especially if you're in the big cities, it's a 24-hour life. It's 24-hour economy. And then you go back home and it's like, wow, things are really different. And then when you go here to Spain, things are really, really different. Like banks here close at 2:00.
Oh, wow.
So it's like, dude, if you work, you pretty much have to ask for a couple of hours off if you need to do some bank business, right?
Yeah, that's interesting.
Really, really big change. But then again, there's so many more holidays here than anywhere else in the world, I sometimes think. So that's really different too. But man, I really appreciate you sharing that, because I think for all of us, it's so important that we know there's so many different cultures out there that we can learn from and see like, wow, something can different. And especially for your kids. And my parents took me all over the world, right? Yeah. So you learn so much from that. So I really appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, for sure.
Buddy, you want to say hi?
What's up, bud? What's your name?
Diego.
I didn't catch it.
Speak up.
Diego.
Diego.
Diego?
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Good to see you, buddy. Do you come on these shows a lot?
Yes. Sometimes we go live together.
That's awesome.
Like last time I had a proud dad moment, and we were walking back home from the zoo. He was tired, had no energy, and he said, "Daddy, I have no energy. I would like some oranges and strawberries."
Nice.
Well, our face lit up, and so we decided to go live. We both had a plate of strawberries and oranges.
Yeah, very cool.
So, all right, man. So you mentioned already a lot of the code of character. Where are you trying to take it? What has been your mission for code of character?
Yes, I've really been thinking about that a lot lately, and I can't give you a really clear view because I think that what I want to do now, and I kind of started with this grandiose kind of idea, like we all kind of idealistic and think that we're going to, make this ginormous impact. And I think that what I've done lately is kind of thinking like, okay, maybe I need to scale back and focus back on myself, and then focus on, one person that I can help. If I'm just a little bit further down the road than this guy, then maybe I can help him out. Maybe I can help him out. Maybe I can help him out instead of, instead of trying to get your message at the furthest reach, right? If we can just help somebody that we're just a little bit further down the road with, and kind of, and bring these people along. I've been thinking a lot about, just when you and I were growing up, people who did what there was people who were kind of, there seemed like there was a handful of like gurus, right? You had like self-help people, right? And they were like up on the stage or up on this whatever, and they were doing the thing. Social media has flipped that, right? So you have just regular guys like me who don't have it all figured out, and who, gets trips over themselves all the time and screws up all the time and has crazy days. I told you today I had a crazy day, and it was, it was insane, and I don't have it all figured out, right? But I've learned some things in my life that I believe can help some people. And so if I can just kind of maybe help one guy at a time, just to get through some of the stresses, and maybe avoid some of the pitfalls, that I have. And most of my stuff has been like mental consternation and mental struggle. And, if I can just kind of help one guy at a time, that's really what my mission is right now. I think that we're evolving as a society past this idea that like only people on stage, or only, preachers behind a pulpit, or gurus on a stage have all the answers. And I think the model of just learning from somebody who is a step ahead of you, I think it's more effective, and I think it's better. I think that people bring more humility that way. And, I think if you look in the news, you'll see right now, one of the self-help gurus has been accused of some really bad things. Right. And you see this with preachers, and you see this with, with these people all the time, that they're going to screw up because they're people. Right. But they get idealized as like they have something figured out. Nobody has these things figured out. Right. You have psychologists, you have marriage counselors who get divorced all the time. You have fitness people who have, who get fat, like it's a struggle. Everybody's struggling. And I think that if we can just kind of reach back and, focus on that brotherhood, and focus on the people who are receptive to us, because we can't, okay, I got a lesson to teach. I can't teach somebody who doesn't want to learn it. Right. Just like somebody can't teach me if I'm not open to what they have to say. And so that's really what I'm kind of coming around to right now, is like, I don't want to just be shouting on a street corner at people while they're passing by. I want to find the people who are seeing the kind of things I've been through, and seeing the kind of things that I'm maybe saying, and see that might be applicable to them, and say, okay, so let's get a plan here, and let's move past some of the struggles, maybe some of the things, overcome some of the mental barriers that are holding you back.
Exactly. That's great, man. Yeah, it reminded me immediately of Team Graziosi mentioning that, we're moving now, or we're living now in the informational age, right?
Yeah.
Social media, and a lot of people are screaming, and that makes it also harder, right? Because there's so many guys out there that are not as authentic and open as you are right now, and honest, right? And for some reason, they're drawing tons of people, and all of a sudden, people see like, oh, wait a minute, they're doing a lot of wrong things, and that it's something I'm struggling a bit with, because it's like, wow, here I am, here you are, we're trying to really build something nice on a great foundation. It's such a pity that now it's so easy for everybody to just come on and share their expertise. So I really like what you're saying. It's like, look, I'm just looking for that one person that is interested in learning from me, and then me sharing their information, because that's your insight, your experience in life, right? Because that's what truly helps. And I've read some of the testimonials that guys written on your website, and they look freaking top notch, and that's what you're aiming for, right?
Yeah. And sometimes people will say, like, if they'll kind of refer to what I'm doing as like the character thing, or the character, like I'm I don't want to say this in a weird way, but I'm not the character guy. Like, I'm not the guy who is like, I'm not the guy of character. I'm a guy who says, if you follow these things, if you do these things, including me, then you're going to move forward in life, and you're going to find some peace of mind in life. I got up this morning and went and took a certification test this morning and failed it. And I know exactly why I failed it, because I didn't prepare. I didn't study. Right. Well, if a month ago somebody would said, how do you pass this test? I'd be like, well, you need to study, you need to prepare properly. Right. Well, I didn't do it. Right. So, so I'm not the guy who has everything figured out, which I'm assuming you probably aren't either. Right. But, it's just these types of things that we learn along the way. These are things that we either choose every single day. I'm going to either do the things that I know that I should be doing, or I'm going to do the things maybe chase the shiny object today, right? Maybe I'm not going to hit the books today. Maybe I'm not going to work out, whatever your thing is, right? Whatever that might be, I just think that if we can all kind of understand that we're all humans, we're all going to go through the struggles. I'm not the guy that has 7 tips to make your life perfect, right? But I am the guy that can say, like, I do know, what did I say today? I do know that if you put your value in how other people react to you, including your loved ones, that you're gonna go through a lifetime of disappointments, right? If your self-worth is based upon how much your wife is showing affection to you, or even how much your kids are showing affection to you, then your life is going to be a series of disappointments, whether you stay with that same woman your whole life, or whether you have 10 different relationships. If your self-worth is built upon how others perceive you and how others treat you and how others show affection, because they're coming to the game with the same baggage and the same problems as you are, right? And so, that's just one little thing, right? And I say that because that's one of the things I fall into. We all fall into this mode of trying to get approval and, feeling good about ourselves. We get a rush when our kids, look at us with those big eyes and smile and say, you're the best. Or I have a 2-year-old right now, and we'll be messing around. And when he starts laughing, like, it makes me feel so good. Right. But some days he's like right now, some days he's not laughing. He's crying. I came home today, I pick him up and he's mad. He's just in a bad mood.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so as good as the good times make you feel, like, if you're going to fall apart when things don't go well, including when people don't love you, or when people don't like you, or when people are mad at you, like, you're going to have a roller coaster of a life, And so sorry, I went off on a little tangent, but that, just one little thing like that, and I'm just learning as I go, like, these are something I can implement. This is something I can implement, because we've all been taught, by whomever, whether it was intentional or unintentional, but we've learned these different things that are unhealthy for us, and unhealthy for our mind. You see a lot of pessimistic people out there. You see a lot of people who say the sky is falling, and, and you look at their lives and you go, okay, I can see where maybe you have some of that negativity, but that negativity is just going to breed more negativity. So you're either going to be here 20 years later talking about how awful life is, or you're going to have to flip your mindset. And that takes some training, and that takes some, some exercises and some things like that. So I think if we can just kind of tackle, one little concept at a time, maybe, and kind of unlearn some of the unhealthy stuff that we all have learned, from childhood or wherever, then we'll all be a little better and get better each day.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And those were some nuggets right there. Great. I appreciate you sharing that.
Sure.
As I mentioned, I love your openness. That's so important. And one of the things that you mentioned, that's the reason why I call it Become a Fearless Father and not Fearless Father.
Yes.
Because I'm not going to be the one saying I'm a fearless father, right? However, I'm trying to become one, or at least throughout my whole life, live along to a journey. And I'm sharing that journey with my audience. And as you mentioned, with those that want to listen and learn from me.
I love that title, man. That Fearless Father is because it speaks to all of us. That's every father goes through that, whether it's when they find out they're going to be a father for the first time, or whether it's several years down the road. Man, we all kind of are, at some point, look at ourselves and it's like, oh, am I up for this? Can I do this? I don't really know. I wasn't paying attention when my dad did it, or my dad did horrible, right? Everybody has their own father story. And it almost seems like it's like, I can't live up to what my father was, or I don't want to be what my father is. And I'm scared I'm going to become that, So if we can flush that fear out, it's a continual thing. Like you said, you're not going to become it, right? It's an every single day thing.
Yeah.
right? Every single day we get up and we have to get our minds right and say, I'm not going to let fear control me. I'm not going to let insecurities control me. I'm not going to let what's on the news and they're telling about who I should be or what I should be. I'm not going to let that stuff control me. I'm going to figure out what I believe in. And then every single day, I'm going to do my best to act on those things.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what made it so powerful. What you just said, right? Just go step by step. Because I've noticed also that those that really want to make changes, sometimes they overwhelm themselves so much, right? It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, now I'm going to work on my health, and I'm going to work on my wealth, and I'm going to work on my relationship with my wife and my kids and my parents, and then it's like, oh, and then all of a sudden you just block and don't do anything anymore. So yeah, that's great advice, man. Step by step. So
I got to throw this in there because I saw this thing. I saw my wife comment on Facebook today on somebody else had posted this image that said simple rules for a great life or something. And it was like 40 rules. And my wife was like, for a simple rule, and they each one of them were simple, right? But she's like, for a simple rule list, this is a lot of rules, right? And so it is that. It's like, if you're trying to lose weight, okay, give me a book to read. I don't want a book to read. Just tell me, like, stop eating donuts. Step 1, stop eating donuts. Step 2, walk every day. Like, what, give me like 1 or 2 things I can do. That's how I operate. I know some people are the kind of people who jump into things full force, and I think there's a certain percentage of people that can kind of do that and get after it and stay that way. But most of us, man, we just want, like, just tell me like one thing that can free up a little bit of time in my day or free up some energy. One little thing that can kind of help me make it through the day with a smile instead of being stressed out, that type of thing,
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I fully agree. I thought I was that guy. I thought I always could do, like, this is what I got, and then I'm going to do it. Now, especially my health.
Yeah.
And I was putting in, like, eat healthy 6 days out of 7. And I was doing my kettlebell exercises, do my cardio, walk 10,000 steps, and I had something else. And I wasn't doing any of those. And now I decided, you know what? My aim is to go 10K steps every single day consistently. And that's all I'm aiming for. And once I've read that and turn it into a habit, then I go to the next step. And I must say, that's working way better, way better. So yeah, that's such great advice. And what you mentioned as well, I think a lot of relationships go wrong there, right? With our wife, because we expect them to do stuff for us that makes us feel good, which is not their job at all, right? We should do that. It's one of the things that I struggled with as well. Actually, not that long ago. But I must say, now that it's not the case anymore, our relationship is just going to a completely different level. I'm sure you've noticed that as well in your relationship. So I really appreciate you sharing that as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Since we were talking about Facebook messages, you shared a message which I found very powerful, which I hope you can enlighten a little bit more. You were mentioning, like, I don't have problems. And I thought, I like that, because most of us say, like, this is my problem, this is what, and then you mentioned, like, no, I don't have problems. So can you enlighten a little bit, like, what you wrote, and share a little bit more insight, what you're trying to say and what people can learn from that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we're all self-centered. And so it's super easy to get focused on ourselves and to turn, everything towards us. Oh, hey, Matt Woodrum, that's my buddy. What's up, Matt? Good to see you, my man. Very cool that you're listening or watching or whatever you're doing, man. I love you, brother. So, but we're all self-centered, man. And we have to be, to a point, right? We have to take care of ourselves before we can take care of anyone else, but I feel like we can get so consumed and with our lives that it just can suck the joy out. Right. And so somebody put on Facebook the other day talking about, what did he say? He said, when's the last time you celebrated the things you have instead of worried about things you don't, or something like that? Mm-hmm. And, in my response, like, I think about that. I don't really celebrate my things, but I am grateful for, the things that I have, and I'm grateful for the position I'm in, and I'm grateful for, just this life. Right. And so I just was kind of overwhelmed. I think it was yesterday with, like, I can't remember. I was talking to somebody, and he was talking about some problems, air quotes, problems. And, I'm thinking about it. I'm like, these aren't problems. Like, these, we're standing here in the middle of the PX, which is a military mall, basically. Mm-hmm. And, we're like, I'm about to go buy some stuff I don't need. my kids are outside in the food court. They're eating a bunch of food, and life is good. Right. And so when we get sucked into like talking about our problems, I was like, I sound really silly. Like if anybody that actually had problems, and the point of this is not to minimize anybody else's problems. I'm only speaking for myself. Right. But like I said, today I slept in, I went and I failed a test that was an expensive test that I have to get finished at some point for my job. And, it's a problem, but it's not, right? Like, it's not like I eat well. I have a loving family. I'm healthy. My family's healthy. Like there's so many problems out there and I just don't really have any of them. Right. And I think I put on that post, like I have inconveniences, I have annoyances, I have challenges, and most of that stuff gets brought upon by myself. If I'm really honest with myself, and we don't like to be honest when it's our fault. If I'm really honest with ourselves though, I can almost always point my challenges back to something I didn't do when I was supposed to do it. Right. Or something that I did do when I don't do that so much anymore. Most of my issues are not acting quick enough on things I know I should do, right? Kicking the can down the road or putting things off. Usually I have an excuse of like, oh, I had something better I had to take care of, or something that I quote unquote should be doing. Right. And so because I didn't take things, you got to pay the price. Everything has a price. And so, everything I can think of in my head that I would label a problem, it's not a problem. It's some type of a challenge or an inconvenience that probably was brought upon by me not paying attention to that thing, because at the time I thought another thing needed attention. Right. But man, I'm just so grateful to be, there's some things that I've done in my life to put myself in this position, right? Like my wife and I, we've done certain things. We paid off a bunch of debt a few years ago. Like we wouldn't have been able to make this move if we hadn't done that. I went to school, ... Right. We did a couple things, but the reality is like, I didn't pick where I was born. Right. I didn't pick who my family was. There's so many things that the reason I'm sitting right here talking to you that had nothing to do with me, And so I think that we just need to all stop, or at least for myself, again, speaking for myself. And this is one of those things I would say, this has worked for me. I would suggest y'all try it. It's just to stop and look around ourselves and say, it's a pretty good life. If you're living a good life, right? If you have like some deep challenges and some real problems, then I'm probably not talking to you right now. Right. And then you might need some help. But when I look around at a lot of the people that I see, that are struggling, most of that stuff is brought upon by ourselves, and you just need some support. Probably you need a plan, and you need to to look and say, it's possible to get out of there. Have you heard the motivational speaker Les Brown?
Yeah, I love him.
Yeah, so awesome guy, right? One of his speeches or one of his talks is talking about it's possible. You don't have to believe that what you want is going to happen. You just have to believe that it's possible.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably the best advice, especially for people who are in bad circumstances, because, it's that whole thing of like, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Well, what do you tell the guy that doesn't have boots? Everybody can't pull themselves up by the bootstraps, but if we can kind of just pass some of these things on, that there are some things that are possible. I think Gary Vaynerchuk talks about, if there's one person who came from you where you came from and looks like you came from, if one person made it, then it's possible. It doesn't mean you're going to, and it doesn't mean you should, or it doesn't mean you're expected, but it does mean that there is just that glimmer of possibility that we can do it. And, and I think that sometimes that's enough. And a lot of people don't want to hear that. We don't always want to hear that when your wife left you, out of the blue for no reason and took off, and, you don't want to hear that. Guess what? In 10 years, you're probably going to be happy again, and you're going to have you're going to find love again, and you're going to get through this, some with some perspective. Some of those things, I think that we can maybe change our mindset in the present by looking in the future and kind of having some perspective on things that challenge us every day. So.
Well, some wisdom, man. I appreciate it. I was checking real quick the time, because time flies, man, when we get shared so much wisdom. And there was one thing I definitely want to talk about. So I'm going to just it might seem that I'm just changing the whole subject and dropping in something, but
Let's do it, man.
I talked about with Justin about this a little bit earlier. It's something that's important to me because my son's birthday is coming up, 13th of June. And we were talking a little bit real quick, rite of passage, right? I've heard about it a little bit. And I'm just wondering, is this something that you're doing with your boys? And how do you set it up? What kind of advice would you have for me to get this organized?
Yeah. So I told you earlier when you messaged about this, I'm not that guy, right? So this is a part where I got to tell you guys that that I am not. I've done a poor job of this as a father,
Okay.
and it's something that's been on my mind for multiple years.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that every time that I've thought about it, there's been some type of life change, right? And so I can think of a million excuses of why I haven't done something like this with my boys, but there's no good reason other than I haven't, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so as important as I think this is, and as important as I would think it is to, I would tell another father, yeah, you should definitely do this. It's something that I haven't done.
Mm-hmm.
And I never really, I never I never even heard anything about this until a couple of years ago,
Mm-hmm.
where I, stumbled upon some people talking about this, and that African proverb. Have you heard the one that's, if you don't initiate the young men into society, they will eventually burn it down? It's something like that. I think it's, don't initiate the young men into the village, they will burn it down. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so I do think that's huge. Right. And so many cultures and societies in the past have that formal rite of passage. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that a lot of it is, this is another tangent I could go on, man, but our blessings are cursed, I can only speak for what I know in the places I've lived and the people I've lived around, man, is we have it so good that some of these things aren't necessary. Right. And so they're not necessary for survival. And, and a long time ago in that village, probably it was necessary to learn how to kill a lion. Right. It was necessary to learn some of these things for the survival of themselves and their families. And so they taught these boys, and they made it ceremonial. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't have these same challenges. And I was thinking about this today, like we operate out of a sense of comfort. We operate out of a sense of what makes us more comfortable. And in most of history, people have operated from a place of survival. They, and they haven't had time to stop and only a handful of the philosophers were doing the things that you and I are doing right now, right? But now we have so much time, and we have more time and wealth and energy than anybody ever had before. Even if we feel exhausted, even if we feel broke, even if we feel strapped for time, like all of us do a lot, we still have more than people did 1,000 years ago, right? Because they were just trying to, get the kill for the day. And so I say that because in a lot of this comfort, I think a lot of those traditions that came with the necessity of surviving the tribe, they went bye-bye, right? I don't know why I said bye-bye. I don't ever say that word. That's weird. But they went away, right? And so now that there's this resurgence, I think of men trying to figure out, okay, like there's been disenfranchised men now for the last 100 years, where a lot of us are going to a soul sucking cubicle, that stereotype of we leave the family and then we don't see them, and then we come back and maybe we don't interact with them. That was like the norm for the last couple generations. So many men since the Industrial Revolution just went off and, made the money and came home and maybe did or didn't talk to their kids. As to where all the time in history before, as soon as the kid was able, they went with them to the farm or to the hunt or whatever that is, right? And so I say that all that to say that I support you in your mission, but this is something that I just have not done. And I need to put that on my to-do list today and figure out how I'm going to do that. Now, I will tell you that my 13-year-old, we've had some challenges. He's very strong-willed, but he's really at a point now where, because we would butt heads for, I don't know, several years. And it's been really cool because in the last year, he's really, in the last 6 months to a year, he's turning into a young man.
Mm-hmm.
And so him and I, we have very different interests a lot of times, but him and I are finding common ground in some different, jokes, and he tells me about some memes and stuff he sees on the internet and whatnot. And so we've kind of found some bonding just in our personalities, which is really cool. So definitely within the next few months, I want to take both of my boys, but definitely start out with the older one, because I've, he's older and I've missed some time with him, and to go take him on a trip with him and I, and start talking about some of the things that, specifically as he's starting that journey into manhood as a teenager, some of those things. So it's something that I've been thinking about. I don't know, especially coming here to Germany, it's a little different to, we're trying to figure out how to, back in Ohio, I'd be like, oh yeah, we'll just go here and we'll set up this kinds of things. I've not actually gone out into the wilderness here. So that's going to be something I'm going to have to kind of figure out as well. So what are your thoughts on the subject? What do you have planned? Cause your son is how old?
He's going to turn 6.
Okay. So you're way ahead of me. So what are your thoughts there?
That's a great question. So that was why I asked you. I want to do something fun. Like I've seen some fathers like taking their son on a camping trip and then trying to build something and where they actually have to do like maybe a survival thing, trying to survive on what the land can provide, or maybe in a select group with just, fathers and boys, just having a bigger group so you can really bond. Something like that is what I'm thinking. However, he's turning 6, and the problem that I have sometimes mentally is like he's only 6. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm keeping him small, and that's where I'm at. And one of the challenges, not problems, but challenges that I'm having with him is he's very emotional.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't tell him anything, or he just crawls up in a ball, and I'm having a hard time with him. So I'm trying to find something that maybe I can understand. I can start understanding him a little bit better on how that works. So I'm still working on it, but hey, maybe we can walk this journey together and come up with some great things that we can do. As I said, I thought Brandon really mentioned you as in like, look, this is the go-to guy when it comes to, working on creating the rites of passage. So I'm going to have to ask Brandon, like, look, I think I made a mistake. Who's the go-to guy? Because, if he says somebody else, then, we can both get in contact with him and start building something. I think it's very important. I think what you mentioned is very true. Fathers are so far away from their kids now, while when they were young, they will all take them. One of the things that I started is doing a monthly theme, right?
Yeah.
So this last month we did dinosaurs. So we bought puzzles, memory cards, books, all in regards to dinosaurs. We play games all in regards to dinosaurs. We try to go to museums all the time. So I try to really build a theme. And this week is awesome. Cowboys and Indians. Nice. And one of the things that it said in the Indian book is like, as soon as they're kids, they learn how to, throw. And the big thing of rites of passage for them was killing their first bison. Right?
Nice, yeah.
And of course, we can't do that now. I mean, I can't take my son on going and killing some bisons. Besides the fact there aren't many left. However, I'm thinking of that picture. It's like, okay, he's turning 6. What's the first thing that we can do that he hasn't done yet that would really boost his confidence, right?
Yeah. Do you guys fish? So you guys been fishing?
No, and I don't want to fish.
I don't either, but I'm going to.
Well, okay, yeah, I don't like that whole.
So my whole thing was that I've been fishing a handful of times, but I didn't want the fish and the throw them back thing, right? I'm not a big fan of catch and release. So I was thinking for me with my kids is like going and catching the fish and doing the cleaning and figuring all that stuff out. That's something I think that we could do just to, in lieu of killing a bison.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great substitute, absolutely. And then, cleaning them by yourself. And then, of course, preparing them and eating them. That's a great idea, actually. But he's only, again, there comes the mindset, he's only 6. So, but yeah, man, I'll keep you posted on that.
I'll tell you who you should get a hold of is Peter King. And I'll hook you guys up. I'll send an email out. He's got a podcast called The Peter King Experience, so plug for his podcast. But a super cool guy. He put a post, I don't know, was it last year or something, where he took his son out and did some fear challenges where he blindfolded him out in the woods and called his name out and stuff and did some really cool stuff. So he would be a perfect guy to talk to on that specific one right there, because I know he did a really cool thing with his son recently.
Nice, man. I appreciate you sharing that. Peter King, right?
Yeah, really good dude.
All right, cool. Yeah, I can't wait for you to hook me up with that. That's awesome. Yeah, it's one of the things that I'm thinking about, because I think like I talked to, I don't know if you know him, Armando Cruz.
Oh yeah, he was on my podcast.
All right, awesome.
Good
So
guy.
awesome, dude. And we were all talking about experience, creating experiences, and that's why I started the monthly theme to really start working on. Okay, how can I put two things in my head every morning. It's like, okay, how can I create an experience today with my kids and with my wife? And the other question is, how can I serve them?
I love that.
Serve my kids. How can I serve my wife? And that has really, like, again, made me go to the next level of my journey towards becoming a fearless father.
Yeah, I love it.
So,
I think another thing too is that most of us, guys our age, we have never been initiated, right? And so
mm,
I think it's worth exploring. And I kind of teeter between like, okay, how much do we need to explore our past and figure out where some of these challenges come from, versus I'm also a fan of CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, where I say, okay, this is where I'm at now. Where do I move forward, right?
mm,
So there's always that kind of dichotomy going on there. But I think some of us still have these challenges of like, am I worth it? Am I worthy? Am I enough? Right?
mhm,
Am I, can I show up as a man in society? Right. So, and I'm just throwing this out there. I've not really heard it done, but like, I also think, okay, what is a way that we can initiate ourselves? Maybe.
mhm,
I know that sounds kind of weird, but just by maybe doing some things that out of our comfort zone that maybe scare us a little bit, that, whatever it is that maybe, can kind of prove some things to ourselves. If you're not normally an outdoor person, maybe you go rock climbing, or maybe you go bungee jumping, or, do some of those things. Maybe you go fishing, or maybe you go hunting, whatever it might be, one of those things that say, okay, because I know there's so many men that are just out there who are doing all the things that look like they're handling their business, but deep in the pit of their soul, they're thinking, I'm not sure if I stack up, you know?
mhm.
And I see it all the time. We see it all the time on Facebook. I see guys in some of our groups putting some things where they're just crushed, emotionally and mentally, and they're just, life is just kicked the crap out of them. And you click on their Facebook page, man, and they got a good looking wife. They got good looking kids. They've got a good job. They got the cool car. Like, if you looked at them on a postcard, you'd be like, man, this guy's got everything together. But there's something there that they haven't reconciled with, and that they're not sure if they are, worthy of whatever in this life, right? They're just not sure who they are,
Mhm.
and we all battle it. I'm saying, talking to the third person, but I know these things because I battled it myself first, right?
Mhm.
And still do, certainly, when, as times go by, and especially when I screw up, and when I let myself down, I let my family down, I back up and say, okay, am I going to own it, or am I going to crawl in the hole and, act like the child that I want to act like right now, right? So owning stuff is hard, like,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. No,
so
that's absolutely true. And yeah, what you mentioned is true as well. But that's one of the biggest pitfalls of social media, right? And it's the biggest pitfall of us as dads as well, because we look at others, and where do you look? Mostly either in your environment, but most of us, for some reason, now spend so much time on Facebook, and that's what we see, right?
yeah,
Wow, that one's amazing. That one's amazing. And thank God there's guys also that are really authentic. I mean, Larry Hagner, for example, is really sharing like what's going on in his life. You,
yeah,
Kenyon
that
as
was
well,
awesome.
right? And that's what we need, because all that huffy, fluffy stuff doesn't help anybody. It
Yeah,
doesn't help that person, right? But it doesn't help us either. And for some reason, we all trying to like, oh man, oh, that's what I want. That's what I want. And in the end, you find out that, wow, there's nothing behind all those beautiful pictures. I
yeah,
always say, man, if you see a beautiful picture, think about how that beautiful picture is made, because most likely they were fighting for an hour to get everybody posted like exactly in the right way they want it. And then as soon as the picture was taken, I think that was in a movie or something. And as soon as the picture, no, it's a
yeah,
series.
yeah.
Malcolm in the Middle.
Okay,
As soon as
yeah,
the picture's taken, everybody's like, and then before the picture and after the picture, they are fighting their asses off. It's absolutely brilliant. And I see it now like that. Like
yeah,
I picture it like that. I mean, nobody's life is perfect. So that's, for me, that's the way it looks. They're fighting before, and then the picture's perfect, and they're fighting after. And that's fine. There's no problem with that. But why they don't share it? I think people can learn more, like what you're saying. Like, I'm making this mistake and I'm manning up to it, or sometimes I don't. People can learn more from that than the perfect picture of look at me, and this is the car I have, and this is my beautiful wife. It's always perfect. And we both know that she's not, and neither are we, right? I mean, I'm making so many mistakes. But then
I'm with you.
again,
I'm with you, brother.
yeah. But then again, look, I actually post. Yeah, I talked about it today. I said, if you're not making mistakes, it means you're not doing anything. You're not living. If you're not making mistakes, it means that you're not moving forward. It's not that you don't want to move forward. It's just, and my head goes off to every single person that's making mistakes, admitting to them, trying to correct them. That's our growth. So that's it, man. We still got some time, a little bit. So I wanted to ask you a bigger picture of just talking about the rite of passage. What does fatherhood mean to you?
I think in terms of how I live my life, it means everything to me. Honestly, I actually was thinking about this recently too. There was some guys in the office talking, and I was thinking like, and I said this out loud. It just kind of came out, but you know, like if we're lucky, we get 100 years on this planet or whatever we get, right? And the reality, everybody talks about legacy, 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 and you know, I think that's a great thing to just to think about, a great thing to aspire to, and figure out what that means to you. But the reality is, in 2 generations, nobody's going to know your name. Nobody's going to remember what you did, most likely, you know, unless you start the next country, and you know, unless you're George Washington or MLK and you do something. You know, most of us, you know, I don't know my great grandparents' names, right? So most of us, a generation or two, nobody's going to remember our names, right? And so the only thing that we have in this life are the impact that we make today and tomorrow, you know. And so the only thing that really passes on, and like I said, I'm spitballing here, right? I'm just exploring things, but the only thing that really passes on is the people that our kids turn into be, right? And the people that they turn in, you know, their children turn into be, and down the line, right? And so, you know, my wife comes first. I try to make her first in a society, I think, where we kind of put too much emphasis on kids first. I think we need to get back to, I don't know, back to, but we need to make our wives first. I think it's very important. But as far as our long-term impact on this world, you know, hopefully I want my kids to do bigger and greater things than me. I want their kids, you know, to do that, right? When I see people, I had Bubba Downs on our podcast. I don't know if you know Bubba, but he has a group called In the Trenches, and he doesn't like to make a big deal about it, but he didn't have a father figure. He had a really rough upbringing, and he has a really the kind of story where you're like, that should have just been your story for generations, you know, but it's not. Like he's rewritten that part, his legacy, and the future generations of his family. He's turned it around, you know, and so these types of things where we can just change the world by changing our legacy, and that's all we have, you know. And so when I think about our legacy, I think about, it's really all we have is the impact that we leave on those around us. And as that snowballs, you know, if your father gave you, you know, passed on a legacy of honor and integrity and striving to do the right things and treating people well, then I think you have a duty to pass that on, right? If your father left you with, you know, hopelessness and abuse and, you know, all of these things, like as soon as you have the knowledge that these things can be changed, then you have a duty to change it to the people that will be left here when you leave. And, you know, and I've not experienced that, but I see guys like Bubba who have done it, and it's so inspiring that I know it's possible, right? And so I say that with complete empathy and complete humility towards people who have been, you know, through those types of struggles. Because when I look at people who had, you know, those hard upbringings, I think, I don't know how you guys are functional. I don't know how, you know, a child who's been abused, how do they show up in the world and do, you know, and make an impact on the world? But people do it, and it's inspiring. It's amazing, right? And so yeah, so I think that all we have really are the impact that we leave on our kids, because that will continue, right? And so in 5 generations, when nobody knows who Justin Bailey was, there's still going to be a lingering legacy of how I treat my children and how I raise my children, and, you know, the kind of people that they turn out to be, and in turn, the type of people that they raise.
Exactly. Yep, I like the way you described that. Absolutely. Actually, my mom was it that told me, like, we're trying to leave you a little bit better than we've got raised, and hopefully you do the same, and we helping you do the same with, you know, their grandkids. So
yeah, that's awesome.
Connects with me again. Great, man. I really appreciate you sharing that. Matt, thank you for being with us, man. I really appreciate you. Matt actually is going to be on my show next week. Do I say next week? Yep, he is on the 20th.
Matt Woodrum?
Yep.
My man. That's great, dude. That's great. Dude.
Yeah, I can't wait to have him on. So that's it, man. It is exactly for us 8 o'clock. So what I wanted to ask, I told you, man, I have so many topics written down. I think we can fill out another hour, but let's not do that. I just want to give you the chance because, as I mentioned, I got still tons of questions. I'm sure everybody that's watching or, watching right now or listening to the recording most likely has more questions for you as well. How can they get in contact with you? How can they follow you? Your podcast, please mention where we can find everything.
Yeah, if you're on Facebook, just go to Code of Characters, just type Code of Character in and the group will pop up. Just ask to be a member. And if you just say yes to Are You a Man, that's the only question you have to answer, but you got to answer that one and join the group. And if Facebook's not your thing, then shoot me an email, justin@codeofcharacter.com. The podcast is on all the usual suspect platforms. And if I can help anybody out in any way, like I said, I have guys that aren't on social media and they shoot me an email, and it's really inspiring. I'm sure you've been through this, Klaas, is sometimes we get on the camera or we get behind a mic and we just say stuff and we don't know if it's doing anything for anybody. And then, when we're having a bad day, all of a sudden, boom, we get an email, we get a message from somebody who tells us, that something we did something positive, and it makes all the difference. So, guys like Klaas and me sometimes get on these things and it can be, because I've been on the other side of this. I watch some of these guys and you think, oh, these guys have it all figured out. No, that ain't the deal. Right. And so I just want to reiterate that, like, if anybody out there resonates with what I was saying and you have, if you want to reach out, just do it. Like I said, justin@codeofcharacter.com. And I'm not going to try to sell you anything. I don't have anything really to sell. And so just get a hold of me and we'll have a conversation.
Awesome, man. I appreciate that. So thanks, man.
Thank you so much, Klaas. I appreciate it. And we'll do this round 2 here. As soon as we get something scheduled, you can come on my podcast and we'll just continue the conversation.
Sounds good to me. I appreciate
Peace out, brother.
Matt, thank you for being with us. Everybody else, thank you for watching, listening to this. I hope you liked it. If you got any value out of this, if you didn't, then I would ask your money back. But, it's a free podcast. But I think everybody should have gotten something out of it. I got tons out of this. So I hope you've written some stuff down and taken action. I keep repeating to everybody, man, you can listen to me for hours and hours and hours. But to be honest, if you'd listen for just 5 minutes and what you've heard, you've taken action, then I prefer that. Yeah, I prefer that. And if you never have to hear from me again, then I prefer that. And knowing that you've taken action and you've changed your life, that's absolutely perfect. That's my mission, my goal for you. So I appreciate all of you. And we will see each other soon. As I said, next week with Matt on. And I got some other great people coming on live. So again, Justin, thank you so much. Really appreciate you, brother. And
thank you.
We'll talk soon. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Are you still meeting up with your friends now that you're a father? Kids making you stress out, you got no time for yourself to work out, read, or relax. Can you still remember the time you were hanging out with your friends, feeling energetic, happy, and confident? Spending time together and talking about your life and your crazy dreams. You're feeling alone now, don't you? No one to share your challenges with, and you're just running around from one storm into the next. Well, it's time to change this now. Join me and the Brotherhood of Fearless Fathers to speak on a weekly basis with like-minded dads to crush your challenges, face your fears with determination, be held accountable, and regain control of your life. If you want to become the hero your family needs you to be, then go to becomeafearlessfather.com/brotherhood. I'm looking forward to seeing you on one of our next calls.